Great. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Swapnali, and on behalf of Seclore and UBS Forums, I welcome you all for this exclusive webinar on data protection, how to navigate the DLP, DRM, encryption landscape from compliance and security. First of all, thank you so much, all of you, for sparing your time today and joining us for this session. Before we start, a few basic guidelines I would like to make you people aware of. I would request all of you to please be on mute and turn off your cameras during the session. We will be taking your questions during the Q&A session. Meanwhile, if you have any questions or queries, please use the hand raise option, or else you can put up your questions into the chat box directly. Giving a brief background about the webinar, today at this webinar, we will bring in together the industry experts who will be discussing on the pros and cons of these technologies and share their experiences. And this would specifically cover how automation is changing the landscape of data-centric security deployments. And to set the tone, I would like to invite our first speaker for his opening remarks. That would be Mr. Vishal Gupta, founder and CEO at Seclore. Giving a brief introduction for Mr. Vishal, he comes with more than a decade of experience in sales, marketing, and business management. He is the founder and CEO of Seclore and handles corporate development, investor relation, and strategic vision. With this, over to you, Vishal sir, to take it forward from here.
Thanks a lot, Swapnali, and thanks a lot all the panel members and the attendees. I know we are all webinared out, and the idea out here is to spend the next 45 minutes odd to extract the maximum knowledge and experience from a very experienced set of panel members that we have on the forum today. I'll introduce a little bit of the topic first in the next couple of minutes, and then we'll bring on the panel members. Right. So just setting the Swapnali, can I project here?
Yes, sure, Vishal, you can go ahead.
Okay, all right. Okay, so this is just the only slide that I have. The context of this session is that enterprises and all of us here in this session have spent the bulk of the last many years trying to protect what I call IT infrastructure, right? This infrastructure consists of networks that we have, applications, devices, people, and the likes, right? So we have systems like antivirus systems which protect devices, or firewall systems and intrusion detection systems which protect networks, and all kinds of application security systems which protect applications. And fast forward to 2022, what has happened is that most of this IT infrastructure has moved outside of the control of the enterprise, right? So networks, as I'm guessing most of us here on this session have become personal. So most of us are logging into this session using our home networks or a hotspot or a hotel Wi-Fi kind of thing, and not an enterprise network. Devices have become personal, right? A lot of data today resides on personal mobile as well as personal, computers, which is used for official work. And applications are more and more moving to the cloud. Now, in this environment where the very things that we were trying to secure have moved outside of our control, the challenge is how do we implement security of any sort, right? If the network doesn't belong to me and the device doesn't belong to me and the application, what happens to security? And what we have found at Seclore at least is that security professionals, risk professionals, even internal audit teams are finding that the only thing that they care about is data. And really, nobody cares about the network. It doesn't even belong to the enterprise. And nobody cares about the device. Again, it doesn't belong to the enterprise. And applications moving to the cloud, we are using a cloud-based application right now. Nobody really cares about the security of this IT infrastructure, because the only real asset that people care about or enterprises care about is data. Right? And that changes the way we look at security, the way we look at risk and compliance and so on. That changes a lot of things, right? Because now we are trying to protect data and not worry too much or sometimes at all about securing the infrastructure, right? And that's really the context of this session today, which is, if we have to protect data, what do we need to do? And the answer very frequently that we get nowadays is, if you want to protect data, the only way is to protect data. And I know it sounds like and I'm going to switch off the screen sharing now. It sounds like a most obvious thing to say, right? Hey, if you want to protect data, you should protect data. And that doesn't even sound like a sentence here, but that's the reality, that our efforts and initiatives need to start moving towards security of the data, right? Now, with that context, I'd like the UBS team to come in and introduce the panel members, and I'll take over from there. Swapnali.
Great. Thanks a lot, Vishal. And I would like to go ahead and introduce our elite panel speakers for the day. We have Mr. Rajkumar Ayyella, who is the CIO at RPG Group. We have Mr. Yogesh Kumar, who is the Head IT and Business Application CISO at Tata Advanced System. Mr. Sanjivan Shirke, Senior VP, Information Technology at UTI Mutual Funds. Mr. Rahul Rathore, Data Governance and Privacy Officer at Hindustan Zinc Limited. And we would be shortly joined by Mr. Bijender Kumar, who is the CISO at Elchem Laboratories Limited. And this elite panel would be moderated by Mr. Vishal Gupta, Founder and CEO, Seclore. Over to you, Vishal, sir.
Thanks a lot, Swapnali. I don't see Yogesh here. Yogesh, are you around?
Yeah, I am able to see him, not sure.
Okay, why don't we keep going, and then hopefully
I'll just ping him. I'll just ping him.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So let's start off, and I'd really appreciate if all the panel members can share anecdotes. I mean, between all the panel members here, we've got more than 100 years. I was doing the maths. We've got more than 100 years of security, risk, and compliance experience here, right? So there's a lot of knowledge that we are drawing from on this session. Okay, let's start off. So security, privacy, and compliance professionals have typically been blamed as Mr. No, right? All of us at some stage, because we are implementing security or privacy or compliance of some sort, have frequently got the label that, hey, this guy is the one who always says no to it, right? Now, no, I cannot send this email, or no, I cannot visit this website, or no, I cannot do this initiative, or outsource this business process, and so on, right? And this is what earns a lot of us as the label of Mr. No, right? You just say no to everything. What do you think about this? Have you ever heard this title, and how do you think all of us put together can partner better with business? So Sanjivan, let's start with you. You're on mute.
Sorry for that. Thanks, Vishal. And this is really a good question to begin this session, actually. This no, actually, it's very, very, positively accepted no. But if I say, and sorry for this, a culprit. So, we started a journey way back in 2014, 2004-5. On information security, and we deployed certain technologies, and we restricted certain sites. So that was a productivity aspects, and ensure that nobody goes on a website which is malicious. Unknowingly, the user may not be aware backdoor what opens and how it impacts. So we have a notification that this site is blocked due to so and so, and it comes under this category. So you know that we are spread across India. So even a Jammu person knows that there is a culprit sitting somewhere who is now restricting my access. So it is not new, Vishal. So but now the things have changed. People are understanding the consequences, about keeping everything open and seamless access on the website, social media, and all. So people have become more responsible, and that respect which was not there earlier, now it is coming to Mr. No. Yeah.
Very well said. Anybody else here? Rahul?
Yes, definitely, Sanjivan, as you rightly said, like the respect is of Mr. No becomes considerable, because the approach even Mr. No changed. Like earlier, we were like we were trying to block each and everything irrespective of what they are accessing and all. But now we are trying to putting Mr. No, even Mr. No is trying to putting some intelligence over like which what needs to be protected and what will be the protection strategy. And even Mr. No has done some calculation and homework, like what are the crown jewels of the industry, like which need to be protected. This is the change, like which users are appreciating, what I believe, Vishal.
Rajkumar, you're on mute, Rajkumar, and Rahul, we can't see your video. Just FYI.
See, I think, I mean, we have evolved as you know, I would say the forum which we are right now is like IT forum. When we say we were considered as an ERP, or I would say, backend data processing unit kind of a stuff. Things have evolved, and the importance of IT has been, is going for a transformation, and dependencies and the organizations are more dependent on IT solutions as such. And the without IT today functioning, you cannot even imagine any kind of an organization, whether it is a manufacturing organization, whether it is an IT services organization as such. So when we say no, I mean, earlier it used to be considered as a cost center kind of a thing, and the dependency was not being analyzed properly. But with the due course, things have changed a lot, and no organization can flourish or even work without investments in IT. So, and with this, the security also has started getting its prominence, because you are creating the data, but if you can't even protect it, then it makes no sense. So I would say definitely yes, things have changed, and it is our responsibility from all our sides saying that how do we put our cases back to the management and get your concurrences to say that it is important is one aspect, and secondly is we also need to bring business value, and that is where the organizations will appreciate this.
So a better appreciation of why no is being said, I think that's one consistent pattern that I see from all the panel members. But also I think the number of times that we say no has reduced, right? Earlier, the number of no's were much higher, right? But today, technology has allowed us to kind of slice and dice more granularly, right? That we can distinguish more granularly around what are good websites and what are not so good websites, or what are good activities and what are not so good activities, and so on. So the number of times we've said we are forced to say no has also reduced, right? And that definitely leads to better partnership with the business, right? So I think it's a changing trend. It's not something that people would say to our respective faces, but it is something that you hear in the corridor. It's more some things that you hear in the corridor. Okay. By the way, thanks a lot, Yogesh, for joining, and welcome.
Thanks. Sorry, my internet got disconnected. That's why.
No worries. All right. The next one I'll redirect to Rahul. Here, see, enterprise IT infrastructure, I think I said the context earlier. Enterprise IT infrastructure is slowly but surely moving outside of the enterprise, right? When it comes to applications which are moving to the cloud, devices becoming more and more personal, networks are often home networks, and so on. Do you see security paradigms changing in this new environment? And what changes do you see?
Right, Vishal. So what we have seen in like in traditional approach, earlier we were having like one data center and so many end computing devices, and our entire protection program, or the risk assessment and the risk management program was data center centric, right, and the device and the infrastructure centric, right. Now the slowly people moving to the SaaS platform and all, but after this COVID area, even the people are quickly jumping to the SaaS platform, the teams and all. Now what we have seen from last 2 years, like like the data center are become irrelevant with reference to protection program or the risk assessment, right? Now even when this COVID started, people are moving towards the protection of end computing device, the work from home scenario, and it's all coming. And even after during the COVID program itself, the people, the sense of the CISOs get matured, like even the end computing device has nothing to do with the program. Now it's a data which need to be protected, and the every step and the entire risk assessment and the program, the cyber security program must be enhanced with the theme of data, and the data is become a critical item where each and every control must be right to with the sense of data protection.
Okay. Anybody else? How have security paradigms changing when? How do you see security paradigms changing when most of the IT infrastructure has moved out of the enterprise? Yogesh.
So the boundaries definitely got blurred for the data center. Where our data is going, we need to know really, and the applications are also moving to the cloud. So both sides, we can say, and somewhere it is a push, somewhere it is a pull. So both kind of things are going on. So there are most of the solutions which are born nowadays on the platform of the cloud itself, and there is no offering for the on-premise. So that is another challenge or another thing that makes enterprise to move to the cloud. So when this work from home during this pandemic time, work from home is announced. So most of the companies are going with work from home or work from anywhere approach. So data is anyhow has gone to the different endpoints and moved out of the enterprise, right? So when we were there into the closed boundary, we were having most closer control onto that. But right now we don't have that one. But instead, losing the control over the data, what can be done, right? So there is this offering from the various enterprise. SaaS offerings are there, right? Infrastructure as a services offering is there. So similarly, there are security aspects around it. So security is also coming as an offering. So there are managed service providers which are providing us the security onto our data or application or to the network, right?
Okay.
So when we say
so security initiative themselves, what you're saying is that security initiative themselves are moving to the cloud, right? Besides
security
data and other applications.
Yes,
Yeah.
security initiatives are also going towards the cloud or towards the hybrid cloud or taking multiple shapes right now. So so there are multiple controls that are required to be placed nowadays.
Okay, and if I can just carry that same conversation forward, knowing that now security is moving more and more towards becoming data centric and lesser and lesser infrastructure centric, what kind of initiatives, product categories, solutions, and so on, are you seeing as becoming dominant, right? Under the category of data centric protection, right? Not as against infrastructure centric protection. Maybe you can start with Rajkumar yourself. You're on mute, Mr. Rajkumar.
Yeah. See, I think Vishal, I agree with you that with the dynamism in the market, the applications are anyhow getting out of our vicinity as such. And also the infrastructure, which we used to say a data center, which is on-prem kind of a data centers, are all moving outside our control as such. So if you see any kind of applications today, nobody talks about on-prem kind of a solutions. All the solutions are either SaaS-based solutions or even infrastructure solutions, like you called it as SASE, or you talk about SIEM products, you name everything. Everything is all cloud-based today. So the control has become extremely difficult for people to manage the data, because the moment you adopt or whether you don't want to adopt. We don't have a choice, and we end up adopting everything because that's the way situations are right now. So most of the solutions, when I say the data has to be protected, and we cannot say the flexibility for the users cannot be compromised. And people, you know, when BYOD concepts have come up, whenever we say SaaS-based applications have come up, the data is going to reside outside our network. So how do we protect? That's the fundamental question which comes up to most of the organizations. And not only this, the data where it is placed. Earlier, we used to place it in file servers, and that concept itself has gone to OneDrives, and you know, it is all about shared collaboration platforms have come into picture and all. So the way we need to look at the data itself has gone for a basic, I would say basic hygiene, or I would say basic transformation itself. So we thought about a lot of solutions, and particularly, for example, most of the organizations have embarked this kind of journeys wherein they say that how do we look at data-centric kind of a solutions? So it is not possible, but we need to create a layer so that, first of all, I would say, okay, that we are talking about solutions like DLP. When we say data leakages and prevention kind of a solution, how does it work? But if it has to work, that itself is a challenge, because the organization itself has to transform themselves in classifying the entire data which is available from ages as such. We need to classify it. We need to, when we have to deploy this kind of a solutions, we need to go through a lot of transformation. In the sense, first of all, we need to identify categorization, classifications of the data in the last, maybe decade or so, whichever is a meaningful data. And when we have to deploy it, we have to involve business. And business also need to work in collaboration with us, and that is where the solutions can be designed properly as such. So I would say, I'll give you a few of the examples in that category. Whenever I say a DLP solution needs to be deployed, what happens is each and every department has its own way of looking at data, whether they call it as, how do they classify the data? How do they say that which is sensitive, which is not sensitive? Where they need to put this particular data, how people needs to classify, how do they share the data to the third-party agencies? How do they actually communicate internally within the department and between, I would say senior management and junior. So there's a lot of classification we need to do, and a lot of attributes has to be built and over and above it. So these are some fundamental challenges. Yeah, sorry.
So let's talk about discovery in general, right? How do you, step one in this whole process is, how do you even figure out where is your data, what kind of data is in which all locations and so on. And I think Rajkumar, when you had said is that involvement of the business is critical in these kind of situations. Even to make a DLP system or a classification system a success, you need business involvement.
Right.
That's where at least I have seen the biggest challenges, right? That the business involvement in security initiatives of any sort is a challenge. And if you the wider and wider set of people you need to get involved to make a security program a success, effectively the lesser are the chances of success in these programs.
Correct.
So can everybody here share what have been their experiences of, well, success as well as failures of just finding out? I mean, and DLP is one class of systems. The same thing on the cloud is done by CASB systems and so on. But if you just talk about the problem of just finding out data, right? Where is all my data? What kind of confidentiality levels should I be applying and so on, right? Just identifying the problem itself in some sense. What kind of challenges have you seen, and what approaches in your opinion? Hey, can I request everybody who's not a panel member to go on mute, please? And UBS team, can you monitor that?
Yes, Vishal.
Yeah. Thanks. All right, let me start with Yogesh.
Yeah.
Things that make this discovery initiative succeed or fail.
So when we talk about the data, so data is important, and data is in a oil for anybody, right? For any industry. So as Rajkumar said, data classification is foremost important. So when business says my data is important, which data is important and to what extent? So first we have to have a data classification, and then the other thing is the data discovery. Data discovery from the systems, whether it is coming from the customers or it is generated inside, or there is PII data. So there are different kinds of classifications, and there are some compliances also attached to it, whether it is a GDPR compliant, HIPAA compliant, or some other compliant. So we need a data discovery, strong data discovery tool in that case. So we had started, and we gone ahead with the discovery of the data within the enterprise, and which the data is residing on to the different endpoints also. So,
and this you're talking about automated discovery. So there's a system like a DLP system, for example, which goes and searches for data everywhere and tries to classify it. Okay.
So manually, it will not be possible for anybody that to gather all amount of data. So we have to have some automated tools around it. So we gathered that data, classified it, some tags attached to it, and then the DLP only can work on that data which is classified. You cannot say that save my all data. You have to be very specific that this is the data which is confidential to me, and sometimes a data is a oxygen for an organization, right? Without that particular,
and what are the challenges that you've seen with these automated approach to classify? I mean, I've seen DLP systems deployment for the last 15 years, and I have to say I'm yet to see a rocking success, right? That hey, this enterprise has just hit the DLP system deployment out of the park. I have not heard it. So what are the biggest challenges that you've seen in this, in the automated side? Manual, we'll come to manual classification a little later, although there are a lot of initiatives around manual classification also. But Rahul, maybe can you comment on what are the biggest challenges that you've seen on the automated side of the discovery and classification?
Right. So, so when we when we take buy-in from like business, like what are the data which need to be protected and what are the rule set which need to be created. So generally, what we get response from a business like each and every data is important, and when we put in this importance of this rule set in DLP, and suddenly the business people are start getting so many false positive. Now the same business people are trying to say no, these are the false positive, but like before 6 months you have only said that these data are very much important and we need to protect. So
exactly.
this is the journey which we started from somewhere, and we trying to find out, we try to fail our system itself, right? So where like here comes the classification, then the automated discovery part, where if we can ask user to either classify each and every file, maybe manually like or forcefully by engineering control, like once the file is created they need to put some classification tag, it must be internal or confidential. On a other way, even we can if the industry is mature enough on data part, we can also put some of the automated controls like based on this rule set and all, like based on the keywords, if we can automatically put some of the classification tags, then the discovery comes in picture, like what are the like when we crawl some of the data from n computing devices, OneDrive, server, shared folders, and all, and we then we finally find some of the report, like what are the data or the same type of data where by virtue of information classification tool, the same manager has done some of the X file tagged as a confidential, and the subordinate of his tagged the same file as internal, right? So these are the challenges we are getting if we are doing some manual classification program and all. But it's a journey where we the DLP program mature, and the regular buy-in from business is necessary and mandatory, what I believe in this. And going
Sanjivan,
forward, last 30 seconds, Vishal. But going forward, what I feel, and when we talk to like board members or the CEOs like necessarily by after 6 months or after 1 month, definitely we need to go with this automated tool, and the automation will be a necessary and mandatory part, and the people and the board are like just waiting for these PDP bills and the law. Once the law will come, the industry will be moving towards the automated part. What I am feeling.
Mr. Sanjivan, what's been your experience of either manual or automated forms of discovery and classification?
So let me structure my answer to a very specific way. The data strategy has to be an initiative which is top-down approach. Okay, the board should be aware that what are we doing, right? And that has to be supported with a structured data classification policy. Rahul has identified a lot of issues, while classifying. So your data classification policy should clearly define the various labels for the classification. What are you going to classify? Is it secret, confidential, private, public? Those classifications, very clear. Those classification has to be supported by either the law or by your regulating body. They should say, out of this data, which is the sensitive personal identified data which has to be protected under the law as well as under the regulation. For example, is that each and every data is confidential? No, right? So you need to have a hang of a confidential data within your network. That is one aspect very clear. Now, how do you do this exercise? You have to run through a risk. You can't do, IT cannot do, not an information security team can do. You have to run through risk and say, yes, if this data is compromised, a specific data, what is the liability in terms of monetary and the reputation for an organization? If you have the hang of this data, then there is something called a manual exercise to give them a sheet, something Excel sheet, and say that please which data you are generating and which is the confidential out of this sheet, out of your function. So once you get this from there, then you design and say how do you incorporate all this into your tools. Now tools, there are two types of tools. One to identify the data and second is to protect the data.
So we'll come to the protection a little later. Let's just talk about you've got 1 billion documents and another 2 billion emails somewhere lying, right? How do you classify them?
So so then you can, once you design that manual exercise, and when you say yes, this is what is the data which I generate, and this data is information, maybe an Excel sheet, maybe a salary slip, maybe a summary of salary statement. Yes, once you have this hang of it, you have to pick and choose the strings, the words, and ensure that these are there on the paper and everybody signs this document from whichever department it is coming before you put your technology.
Finally, Mr. Sanjivan, are you finally heading to a regular expression based system like DLP, going and hunting down in that repository of 1 billion documents?
Not only that, more than that, not even regular, there are others also. Regular expression, some specific word to your organization, there are regular expression to identify Aadhaar card, for example, PAN card.
Sure. So, I understand. Patterns. Look for patterns in the data, right? See, this, my question there was that this kind of technology, right? Pattern recognition, identifying credit card numbers, health records, and so on. This technology has existed for the last 20 years or more, right? The first set of DLP systems, One2 as a company came about in 1998, right? 24 years now. We've still seen large number of DLP systems where after many years of investment, enterprises are not able to get to a level of confidence with the DLP systems hunting capability. that they say, okay, yeah, if the DLP system says this is confidential, I can just apply rules which will prevent this from being attached to emails, or whatever are the enterprise rules, security rules. And there obviously is, if it's over a long period of time, 20 years is a long time for in the tech industry, it's probably 4 or 5 generations now. This remains an unsolved problem, right? I don't know. I mean, maybe a show of hands here of people who've actually seen true blue discovery and classification system success at scale. Anything beyond 1,000 people is what I'm calling scale right now. It's a pretty low benchmark, right? I have never seen that, just as an example. But has any of you here, Rahul, Rajkumar, Sanjivan, Yogesh, have you seen large scale success of automated discovery and classification systems? And I'd love to know of that. What has contributed to that? Yeah,
as you said, truly 100% something is not achievable till now, right?
Let's say 80%.
So it's always a hybrid approach. So we have to go by hybrid approach only. Whatever is automated, that is classified. Let's say we have categorized if there is a Aadhaar card. So Aadhaar card, one pattern it can recognize. But there are certain files which are complex and cannot be recognized as a automatically classified as a secret document or any other classified document. So for that we have to go by manual approach only, right? So that's again mix and match. As Sanjivan said correctly, it has to be based on the laws, compliances, and certain other methods. But there is no golden bullet or no single tool which can make it automatically classified and automatically DLP is there, which can prevent you. It can say, oh, you are 100% secure. No, nothing is there.
No, I'm setting low benchmarks here, Yogesh. I'm saying, okay, if I'm investing so much time and energy, I should expect at least 70-80% success at scale. At scale is like 1,000 people more companies, and I haven't seen that, right? I'm just that might be my ignorance more than anything else, right? I can offer I can offer something which is very recent, but I have seen large scale success, right? So everything that we're talking about is based on the content itself, right? So you look at an email or you look at a file and you figure out what is the content of that email or the file, and then you try to make a decision, right? Which might be manual, which has a problem of user awareness. Nobody's really interested in, going through security training to make a decision of whether this file I'm creating is confidential or not, and so on, right? That becomes difficult to implement at scale. And the other extreme are these automated discovery and classification systems like the ones we talked about, DLP, CASB. Sometimes there are pure play discovery systems also, which just do discovery and nothing else. And I'm combining all of these systems in one, let's say in one bucket. And for me, for all my ignorance, I have not seen them succeed at scale also. The approach that I have seen succeed and at scale when thousands, hundreds of thousands of users is where it's almost that you try to combine the content of that email or that file. Let's talk about a file with the context. Right? So, for example, if a file is being sent from the CFO to an external legal counsel, and you can analyze the file to say, okay, this has enough for me to make a decision that this is confidential. Then that combination of what is the context of that collaboration and combined with that content, right? That combination I have seen work at scale, right? So, for example, if I can, in some sense, analyze the content, which is great, which is something that automated or manual I've been able to do 20 years ago also, but set in the context. Hey, is this file lying in a folder which is called board communication, for example, right? Or is this file actually being sent by the CFO to the external legal counsel, or the head of HR to the CFO, and right, and all of that. That combination, I have standalone content-based decision making I have not seen succeed. So let me put it out there that has anyone here seen that kind of initiative? Any experiences over there where we are able to see the context of the collaboration with the content and make that decision combined? I can share one example, very large financial, 100,000 people plus financial services company, but I'd like to open it up to the panel members first. Anybody here who's seen this kind of a thing succeed or fail for that matter?
No, even Vishal, like we are struggling with the same problem where the most of the DLP program or the DLP tools or the other tools are designed to protect or discover or identify a very generic or the common type of templates and the things and the data, right? But being a metal and mining industry, we have different type of data, where like everywhere the mining and the smelting is done with the same type of formula and same type of thing. So here we have different type of data which is important for us. So let's say the exploration related data, the incidents and the safety related incidents, right? The drawings, which is very important from a physical security perspective, since we are critical infrastructure. The AutoCAD drawing scenario which is very critical, but the tool which what I am feeling are not good enough to identify what is inside from a content wise, what is inside, or what is in file. So this type of problem I'm right now struggling. Sure.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, and I'll open it up to other panel members. Otherwise, I'll walk through a 1 minute through a case study of one of the very large financial services companies that I very recently saw succeed at scale, and this is 100,000 people plus companies spread across the globe. But Rajkumar.
Yeah, I think Vishal, I've been I think absolutely you're right saying that one is, if it is not a greenfield, if it is a greenfield kind of a project, from the day one you can start deploying all these things. But if you typically look at organization like this, where we have terabytes and terabytes of data lying with us, we run a lot of data insight tools to get and content based understanding of it, what it is, and then we try to start sharing with the department to say what is the relevance of this particular data. What happens is it is a journey which I have been telling, and it requires both automation as well as people involvement in every case. So that's where we say that 100% is not be possible, but yes, it is a journey, and we always start to stake out the insights of the data and start sharing it with the department to say, boss, this is what is the relevance of the data. You tell me how do you want to classify this? And that's where, we will be able to cut down the unrelevant data, which we are trying to hold it, or, we can archive it, or we can actually make it as active and passive kind of a data. So what we intend to do is categorize the entire quantum of data lying with you to say which is supposed to be active and which is supposed to be passive. And whichever we feel that it is passive, then it should move into a place where it does not need every day's attention. And second important thing is the data leakage, which is the prime most important, because the data must be lying with us. That is fine with us. But when people start sharing this data outside, it could be an internal threat. I'm not even talking about an external threat. I'm talking about internal threat. Because the sensitive data wherein people might exchanging it out, where it could be something relevant for some kind of we do a lot of we need to come up with some kind of a cost sheet to which is very sensitive internally, but people should not share it outside, so that when you go for a bidding or so, the data becomes relevant for somebody else, so that they it is so sensitive for us. So I don't want to talk too details about it. So we do not want this data to be shared outside. So the keywords or contents and all these things becomes important for us, because the file is encapsulated. We don't know what content it goes into it. So the tools will help us out in identifying the relevant keywords which are relevant for each and every business entities, to say that if a data of this nature is there encapsulated into a file, should be considered as sensitive and it should be considered as confidential. Okay, so the mechanisms where we are trying to say that piece, one is classifying it. It is possible, it may not be possible at this point of time. But the tool comes as an important thing for us because the tool can go deep into the content and identify which is the one which is sensitive for businesses. And that is the one which should not be shared out. And in case if it is shared out as a process, then it goes to the layers and it goes to next levels where it has to be revalidated and reapproved before it is sent outside. And even if it is sent outside, then there is an attributes which we control it, saying that how relevant it needs to be or when it needs to be pulled back. This kind of things which we are using it in terms of DLP to say, how much we can control the data which is exposed outside or inside also. Okay, yeah, Vishal, you can share your case also.
Maybe I have one question which came out of Rajkumar what you just said, and then I'll spend the last maybe 2-3 minutes in walking through the case. By the way, everybody who's attending, please, if you have questions, please feel free to post it in chat. I'll see what all I can incorporate. But let's park this whole discovery and classification problem, and let's say we are in an enterprise where the enterprise has been able to discover and classify like 80-90%, 100% of its data. What kind of technologies are you seeing now that hey, how much is where is your data, what kind of data is it, and so on? What kind of technologies are you seeing to actually implement security, right? To actually protect that data? Because just knowing where the data is and knowing how confidential it is, it's like diagnosis, it's not prognosis yet. What kind of initiatives are you seeing on the protection side of things, right? Maybe Yogesh? You're on mute, Yogesh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So please repeat a bit. I lost your voice in between.
My question was, let's assume that the enterprise has somehow made the journey to completely discovering and classifying all its data, right?
Yeah.
But that itself doesn't solve any problem, right? It's just knowing the problem. Right? What kind of initiatives have you seen in actually implementing security and compliance controls on the data itself, like protection, the actual protection piece?
So, Vishal, that depends on the business. What kind of business you are into? So we have to have a strong mechanism of classifying the data first, right?
Let's assume we've gone through that journey, right? So all that is over, right? The enterprise has been able to figure out some way to discover and classify 100% of its data.
Right.
What happens next?
So next is the data protection mechanism around it. How to protect that data going outside the premise, means either DLP must be there or some DRM mechanism, DRM, CRM mechanism should be. So file should have a right management, whether it can be used by somebody, sent to somebody, or what kind of rules can be set over the files. Let's say if I don't want my file to be written or to be changed by somebody, then I will put some rules around it. And it should not be changed, or it should not be downloaded. It can be only view, right? So and there is again there is no golden or silver bullet around something for any organization. So we have to be cautious around it. So if we are putting some data controls that let's say email we have put it, what kind of mechanism are there? This file is confidential, this mail is confidential. What should be done around that? Right, that is the next course of action, and that is always synced with the business, how business wants to do it. If that file, confidential file, is there, can we move only within the organization, or it can be shared with some specific set of customers, specific set of customers or specific set of vendors? Then controls can be set accordingly only, right? So on all the classification levels, right? And as this there are compliances around it. For example, HIPAA compliance is there, right? and there is a GDPR compliant. Nowadays, we are also coming up with a privacy law. So all things have to be considered around it.
Sure.
Then only we
Okay.
can make it.
Any of the other panel members on? Okay, one is controls that flow with the document itself, which are DRM or encryption kind of controls. Then there are flow controls, right? That, hey, this file, because I know it contains credit card data, it should not be uploaded to OneDrive, or things like that, right? DLP and CASB kind of controls and DRM kind of controls. Any other measures that you've experienced deliver effective results on the protection side, right? Mr. Sanjivan, Rahul, anybody?
So, Vishal, so you have to actually find out what are the channels through which the data is going to go out of your organization. Okay. And that is the channels where you have to concentrate. So now everybody knows that data in motion we can take care of putting encryption. But what happens when the data at rest and when it is going out of your network? Okay. So who is allowed to send that in confidential information? Okay. The control of people who can send it out. Okay. What is the attributes they want around that data to reside when they send outside? Which that data has to automatically die after some time, or somebody cannot print. Those controls should go along with the data itself, and nobody else can send. Only allowed people are about to send, because I cannot stop legal heads sending a data to the lawyers or the concerned people to outside of the organization to the lawyers. You need to see that you take a rule saying to whom you are sending, please send me an email ID, you whitelist those, and what attributes you want to put around that data when it goes out of your organization.
So it does come out to be DLP trying to control the flow of information, and then rights management or DRM in general trying to control what happens to the data after it has gone, let's say to an external agency and so on, right? Those are the two. Okay. The last thing here, maybe since we have only 5 minutes, let me walk through the journey of a very large financial services company that Seclore had the pleasure to work with. Right. So a little bit of history. This is a very large company, one of the Fortune 10 globally, and this company had DLP, which is 15 years old, right, already deployed, and so on, and big discovery and classification initiatives, right? Both automated discovery, which is by a DLP system, as well as by a pure play discovery tool, as well as manual classification, where somebody creates a document, one of these 5 things show up, you click on the yellow button, it becomes confidential, you click on the red button, it becomes highly confidential, all of that. And at scale, these initiatives hadn't worked, right? And then this organization kind of took a step back and said, hey, this discovering the problem, discovering data and classifying data is just diagnosis, right? It doesn't mean anything. If you don't know where your data is versus if you know where your data is, that has no effect on securing the data by itself, right? And then the fundamental change in thinking that came about in this company was that, is there a way that you can, in some sense, bypass or augment, in most cases just bypass, but in some cases augment this knowledge of what is the data and where is it with security policies that have already been defined, security and compliance policies which have already been defined, right? Let's take an example. This enterprise is a big user of Office 365, right? Now, Office 365, it already knows, or there are already security policies in Office 365. OneDrive, for example, I'll just take one of the elements of Office 365, right? Where a folder already knows, hey, if documents come into this folder, Sanjivan should be able to access, but not Yogesh, right? Just as an example. Now, what this enterprise did is that instead of trying to once again discover what is in that folder and then applying, whether this is credit card data or this is health record or whatever, right? The enterprise implemented the policies that that govern that OneDrive folder into the data itself. So that data, that all the files which are lying in that folder of OneDrive, now Sanjivan can access, but not Yogesh. Right now, all of this has happened without any discovery. Right, this is relying on the fact that, hey, whatever is the sequence of events that have led to that file landing up in this folder, right? We leave that sequence aside. This file is in this folder. We already know what is the security policy of this folder. Let's just make sure that the file implements that security policy irrespective of where it goes. Right, and those controls are obviously DRM kind of controls. And using this organization's dependence on being able to discover what's in that folder, classify that, hey, there are 100 files. Out of these 100 files, 30 are highly confidential, 20 are internal, and so on. All of that in some sense went away, and the enterprise went from zero to directly protecting the data, in some sense almost skipping the part of discovery and classification. Right? Because that's just a diagnosis. If you already know the medicine, let's say if you had a universal medicine for everything, you may not need to diagnose at all. That's where the medical terminology, medical analogy ends, unfortunately. But what we have seen very, very successfully implemented at scale in this particular company, and we are seeing an increasing pattern that trying to solve this discovery and classification problem and putting that as a prerequisite to the data protection problem is landing up in a place where enterprises just never finish this project. The discovery and classification project, it starts, but it never ends. It's a perpetual project, and enterprises just never come to the protection piece at all because they're so busy in this discovery and classification piece, right? So it's just one example. I mean, it's something that seems to be working in a few particular contexts, but I wanted to throw this idea out there, and I know we have like maybe a minute. Invite comments. What do the panelists here think of this approach, where we've kind of skipped the problem completely of discovery and classification? Anybody last comments? I know we are at the top of the hour here. We have a minute, but anybody here have last comments? I know there are a bunch of questions. We'll see if we can spend a minute or so. Please post your attendees if you can post your questions. Unfortunately, we'll not be able to unmute because there's this, we are seeing our almost 80 or 90 attendees here. We may not be able to unmute, but if you can post your questions and comments on the chat, we'll try and incorporate that.
Yeah, Vishal, we already have a few questions which are posted on the chat. I'll just read it out for you guys.
Actually, why don't I do this? Okay. Kiran has had a question that is there a silver bullet to automatically discover, classify, protect, and comply for the data privacy journey? If there was a silver bullet, we would all be out of jobs. Kiran. Nothing. So you should be thankful that there is no silver bullet because I need my job. I can answer that question on behalf of the panelists. I think there are a bunch of questions around sequence of steps here, right? And I think like what should we do first? Discovery? Should we do classification? We should do protection and so on. And I guess some of this came out in the panel. I think this question was from Archit. Some of this came out in the panel that you could start from discovery, right? Which is where most enterprises start. You could start with discovering. You could start by manual classification. You could start by protection, right? All of these are valid starting points depending on the context. So, for example, if you already know what are your biggest, if you already know here are a set of engineering drawings which are my most confidential information, right? Maybe protection is a good place to start because you already know what you need to protect. Right. And if you don't know, so for example, you have data spread all over the place. And so if you just want to get a inventory of data, kind of figure out the problem before solving it, then discovery and classification might well be the place to start. I don't know if any of the panel members, one of the questions is, where does it start? Anybody here on comments? On where does this data protection journey start? I think Sanjivan, you're on mute in case you're speaking.
So Vishal, let me take that question. So any organization has to start to identify what is a jewel crown in your data. Unless you classify a data manually or maybe judgmental, you cannot protect what is important for you. And please believe that no single technology can classify, protect, and secure. Data classification tool will only classify. It will not protect. While a technology, a DLP will protect, but what to protect? You have to tell for classification and complementing that technology. So please, when you are look at a comprehensive data protection. Okay, see which technology is doing protection and which technology is classifying, and overall how it is getting secured. Right?
Agree completely. There is no silver bullet, thank God for that. Right, that keeps us all occupied in some sense. I think one of the questions, it looks a little more like concern, but if we don't classify and protect, we may end up protecting everything, and it may lead to resource wastage. Right, which is, I guess, this is the same kind of problem we are trying to look in different ways. Right, if you my counter argument to that is, hey, if you already know what needs protection, where is your most confidential information, then classification is a waste of time. Right? If you don't know and you try and protect everything, then protection is a waste of time, and so on. So it finally comes back to, hey, we all need to understand the specific context a little more than just general rules. Right? Is it possible to share a sample data classification policy? Okay, I don't know if that's. I'm sure. I don't know if any of us here are an expert. Maybe Yogesh is on this. Shiju, it might be a good idea for you to reach Yogesh after this conversation. See if he can help. I think there are a lot of product specific questions which we will skip, but I think we're at the top of the hour. This has been an excellent and very thought-provoking session, and I really thank all the panel members here in the middle of COVID and in the middle of between work and family and so on. More than 24 hours of our time are already committed, and from that to take away time and share your knowledge with all of us is really valuable. Really appreciate all your time. And thanks a lot, Rajkumar, Rahul, Sanjivan, Yogesh. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank
you.
Thank you
Thanks,
everyone. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Vishal, and thank you so much all the panelists for joining us today and for the insights you all have shared. And with this, we will like to close the session for the day. Thank you so much, all of you, once again. Stay healthy and stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Hey, by the way, I'm happy to, I have a little more time. I'm happy to take some of the more product specific questions.
Perfect. That's great. Attendees, if you have.
But please feel free, Rajkumar, Yogesh, if you want to drop off, anybody, I'm happy to continue. I'll take some of the more product specific questions here since we have. And please feel free if there are questions for me, I'm happy to continue. So I'll just scrolling up to see if I missed out any questions here.
And attendees, if you have any more questions that is product specific, please go ahead and put it up into the chat box. Or you can directly write back to us and we'll be happy to connect you with Seclore team as well.
Yeah, so one of the questions was from Rupesh. How does Seclore itself protect data, especially in the context of printing? I guess I don't know, Rupesh, maybe you want to clarify, but there are two kinds of solutions that we have. One is that the Seclore system can implement print controls themselves. So you could mark specific documents or a class of documents as not printable at all. The other thing is that a lot of banks, financial services companies use our technology also when they share information with external printer or printing vendors. And I don't know which one are you talking about, so I'll answer both. So in those cases, what happens is, let's say a large bank like HDFC Bank, for example, is outsourcing a lot of its printing operations, data entry operations to external agencies. What all of these financial services companies in general do is that they implement controls on that data before it is sent out to an external agency, such that, for example, if a credit card statement is out there, to be printed, once the first time it is printed, that data will self-destruct, right? And therefore, a lot of these compliance controls that needed to be implemented on external agencies now can go away, because the data will self-destruct after the first time it is printed, right? So both kind of controls exist, and depending on your questions, you can take the relevant answer, and I'll continue scrolling down. Is it possible to automate that specific data to a particular recipient? This is a question by Sunil Wavade. Is it possible to automate the specific data to a particular recipient? Yes, that's what Seclore's technology or rights management systems in general do. It's possible to implement very, very granular control that if this piece of information goes to this particular internal or external recipient, then implement these controls like no forwarding or no copying or no printing, or those kind of things, and self-destruct after 7 days and so on, right? Let's see. Yes, Rupesh, I see your comment. There are two systems. One is the Seclore rights management system, and there is something called not Seclore API Connect, but Seclore App Connect. It's called, and I can get one of my colleagues to reach out to you right after this session. I'll read out the question. This is by Aditya. Do Seclore DLP CASB integrate with privileged identity and access management solution, or provide some such solution? I can answer for Seclore for sure. So Seclore system almost always integrates with identity and access management solution to figure out these policies. Right? Some of this I was describing in that case study that I ran through. Right? That identity and access management systems are, the first things that the Seclore system would typically integrate with in any enterprise. So the short answer is yes. Okay. All right. I think I've run through pretty much every question, and thanks a lot once again everybody who was attending. We are all webinared and screen timed out, so appreciate your time, and if there is interest, please feel free to reach out to us or visit the Seclore website. If there is any interest, we'll respond back to you very quickly. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks a lot for your time.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Vishal, for your time today. And attendees, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to connect you with the team directly also. With this, we will like to close the session for the day. Thank you so much, all of you, once again. Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Vishal, once again. Thank you. Bye.